Hello then, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen, this is Al24 streaming live from the capital Algiers, and coming up next in our news program. Ukrainian authorities performed disaster response drill near the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant on Wednesday. This followed repeated shelling at Russian-occupied plants. A bombing at mosque in the Afghan capital of Kabul during evening prayers on Wednesday killed at least 10 people, including a prominent cleric. At least 30 people have died and dozens of others have been injured in forest fires that ravaged 14 districts of northern Algeria. The head of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, Ahmed Raisuni, presented a set of lies against Algeria and the Sahrawi people. Algerian Muslim Scholars Association, set an urgent meeting on Friday to demand his departure from the Union. Sierra Leone is denominating its currency in an attempt to reset the economy. The central bank has removed 3 zeros and reprinted Leone notes. Hello then, welcome. I'm your host, Abdurrahim Kashor, and those were today's top stories. The Algerian authorities reported today that the death toll from forest fires in At-Tarf has risen to 30. After the deadly fires that ravaged a number of eastern states in Algeria, the Algerian Prime Minister Ayman Ben Abdurrahman was transferred today, Thursday, to the state of At-Tarf by order of the President Abdelmajid Tebboune on Wednesday. The Algerian Minister of Interior Kamal Beljoud announced the death of 26 people in fires that erupted in the east of the country. The Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune expressed his sincere condolences and consultation to the families of the victims, hoping for the speedy recovery for the wounded and the injured people. The head of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, Ahmed Raisuni, did not repent for his statements of jihad against Algeria, the march towards Tindouf and the return of Mauritania to the royal throne, but rather presented a set of lies against Algeria and the Sahrawi people. Algerian Muslim Scholars Association set an urgent meeting on Friday to demand the departure of Raisuni. Zahra Farjani.
دعاة المغرب مستعدون أن يذهبوا ويقيموا بالأسابيع والشهور في الصحراء وفي تندوف.
After his repulsive and dangerous statements about jihad against Tindouf, Algeria, the existence of Mauritania, and his support for the occupation in Western Sahara, the head of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, Moroccan Ahmed Raisuni, was supposed to apologize to the Algerians and Mauritanians, according to what was announced by the Union's Secretary General Ali Mahyiddin Qurrat. But what happened is that Raisuni continued his fallacies and lies, claiming that he was calling for peace talks in the region.
I call to allow Moroccan scholars and preachers and all Moroccans to cross to the city of Tindouf and its camps to communicate and understand with their Moroccan Sahrawi brothers who are detained there about unity and brotherhood that we gathered, and about the absurdity of the separatist project of which the Polisario Front is fighting.
The Fatwa Committee of the Ministry of Religious Affairs in Algeria expressed its condemnation of the provocative statements made by Raisuni, whose words contain a clear incitement and an explicit call to attack the sovereignty of countries. For its part, the Mauritanian government condemned the statements of Raisuni, in which he described the existence of Mauritania as a mistake, saying that his statements are not based on any credible source.
His statements regarding Mauritania are denied, denounced, condemned, and rejected. They are not based on any source that gives him any kind of credibility. They are against the evidence of history and geography, as well as the laws that govern the people.
What is baffling is that Raisuni did not have the courage to call for jihad and march to liberate Ceuta and Melilla. Yet he was brave enough to deny the Western Sahara and Mauritania's sovereignty and independence and considered them as Moroccan land in a miserable identification with the expansionist ideology of the Makhzen regime. This contradicts the obligations of a person presented as a religious leader and heads one of the largest gatherings of religious scholars in the Islamic world. While he is supposed to perform with greater wisdom and to call for peaceful coexistence and respect for the other and spare the blood of Muslims, Raisoni has shown a very tight vision on his job and the real ethics that Islam has taught humanity.
Algeria's Director of Communication, Information and Certification at Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that Algeria continued to support people in self-determination along the lines of the Palestinian and Sahara issues. During the event commemorating the days of Mujahid Abdawi stressed that Algeria had played an important role in codifying the principle of the right of peoples to international self-determination during the liberation, revolution and opening of jealousy in the wall of colonial domination. The Electoral Authority announced Tuesday that the controversial referendum's final results showed that 94% of voters were cast in favor of giving Tunisia's President Kais Saied unrestricted power. The Electoral Board officially declared that results of the election held on July 25th and stated that voters had overwhelmingly approved the new constitution. According to the board's president Farouk Bouaskar, just over 2.6 million people voted in favor of the charter. A Palestinian youth died Thursday morning with wounds he sustained during confrontation with the Zionist occupation forces while the storming of Joseph Chirine east of the city of Nablus in the northern West Bank. According to what was announced by the medical staff at the Arab Specialized Hospital in the city, the Palestinian Red Crescent Society in Nablus issued a statement announcing that confrontations resulted in the injury of 31 Palestinians with live bullets, including 3 in serious condition, 1 with a gas bomb in the head of 25 from gas suffocation, and 1 with a fall. UN spokesperson stated that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres will meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Turkish President Tayyip Recep Erdogan in Ukraine on Thursday, as on Friday they will visit the Black Sea port of Odessa, where grain exports have resumed under UN deal. This comes at a time when Russia and Ukraine are exchanging accusations of attacking the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant that is considered the most dangerous issue in Ukraine since the war began.
At the invitation of President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, the Secretary General will be in Lviv on Thursday to attend a trilateral meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey and the Ukrainian leader. The Secretary General will then go on to Odessa the next day, where he will visit the port that is one of the 3 being used as part of the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
Ukrainian diplomats are nuclear scientists and the International Atomic Energy Agency mission to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Only absolute transparency and controllability of the situation at and around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant for the Ukrainian state, for the international community, and for the International Atomic Energy Agency can guarantee a gradual return to the normal nuclear safety.
According to Ukrainian officials, 2 people were killed and 18 wounded on Thursday. An apartment building in Kharkiv was struck by Russian forces. The strike followed a Russian attack on Kharkiv on Wednesday, with reports saying 7 civilians were killed and 17 wounded. President Volodymyr Zelensky described the Wednesday attack on Kharkiv as tricky and cynical strike on civilians with no justification. The different matter now, Chinese troops will travel to Russia to take part in joint military exercises led by hosts and including India, Belarus, Mongolia, Tajikistan and other countries. According to the Chinese Defense Ministry, China's participation in the joint exercises was unrelated to the current international and regional situation. China on Thursday opposed the US-Taiwan initiative on the 21st century trade amid high tension over the status of the island nation. Hassan Burkan on What's For.
Taiwan and the United States announced on Thursday the start of trade talks in early fall, as a senior U.S. diplomat warned that Beijing would continue to pressure the island. Beijing reacted by strongly opposing the negotiations.
We demand concrete actions from the United States to that they strictly abide by the One China principle and the 3 Sino-American joint communique, that they end all forms of official exchanges between the United States and Taiwan, that they refrain from negotiating or to sign agreements with the Chinese region of Taiwan of sovereign or official nature.
Washington's announcement on trade initiative with the island comes after the Chinese military held massive exercises since early this month. The series of military exercises considered necessary and legitimate measures by Chinese authorities.
The series of military exercises conducted by the Chinese military in the waters near the island of Taiwan are necessary and legitimate measures to counter the major provocations of the United States and the separatist forces of Taiwan independence, and to resolutely safeguard the national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Taiwan's largest trading partner by far remains China. Last year, some 42% of Taiwan's exports went to China and Hong Kong, compared to 15% for the United States.
Same line of thought, Taiwan air defense soldiers demonstrates the locally manufactured Skybow 3 weapon system and its most advanced fighter jet F-16 during a presentation to the media. In a nighttime demonstration as China continues military drills around the island.
We were not nervous during China's military exercises, as our regular training is prepared for all day 24-hour missile operations. When the Chinese military acted, we were already well prepared. Our soldiers follow the SOP, Standards Operating Procedure, which is our troop training program, as per normal. So actually, we were not nervous at all. We were just excited to finish our mission.
A bombing at mosque in Kabul during evening prayers killed at least 21 people, including a prominent cleric, and injured more than 33 others. Many children were reported to be among the wounded. There were no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack. During evening prayers on Wednesday, members of the Taliban were seen guarding the mosque on Thursday when an explosion had occurred overnight. Taliban spokesman Mujahid Zaybullah condemned the explosion, promised to bring criminals to justice.
It was even in prayer time, and I was attending the prayer with others when the explosion happened. It was a very powerful explosion inside the mosque. Around 24 to 25 people were martyred, and several others were wounded.
Afghanistan's economic crisis appears to show no end as the United States decided not to lift sanctions of Afghan's government assets held by the U.S. Central Bank. The sanctions, which directly affect Afghans' families, leaving them in desperate need for humanitarian aid from other countries. Islam Seed.
Due to the wide-ranging sanctions the U.S. imposed following its troops' withdrawal from Afghanistan year, the Afghan economy is in a fast spiral. According to UN statistics, around half of the 40 million Afghans are estimated to be suffering from severe hunger. Locals are requesting greater humanitarian help from abroad. The UN World Food Programme is seen as a major source for humanitarian aids in the country. However, depending on them is not a viable solution, as many families have little or no access to money.
The people of Afghanistan are living in a dire situation beyond imagination. I ask the world to send more humanitarian aid, which we currently really need.
Local businesses are also struggling with these financial difficulties. Banking crisis suspended many infrastructure projects throughout the nation, which affected ordinary Afghans more than the Taliban government.
People cannot afford things from my shop now. There's no business for people.
The United States opted not to unfreeze around $9 billion worth of Afghan government assets held overseas, citing worries that the money would end up in the hands of Taliban.
Industries cannot import raw materials easily now simply because they are not able to transfer funds abroad. And I think that also has hit the labor market quite significantly. Our income levels have deteriorated significantly. The sanctions have not affected the current authorities. They are simply affecting the common people, indirectly.
Now, in the face of sanctions, the Taliban leadership is being asked to change its stance and support infrastructure projects that would generate employment and lead the country out of its economic turmoil.
The main political leaders in Iraq pledged on Wednesday to work on a roadmap to try to get out the country out of the impasse during a meeting avoided by the essential Shiite leader Muqtada Sadr. In a press release published at the end of this meeting, convened on the words of the Prime Minister. They also invited the Sadrist current to engage in the national dialogue, which they agreed to continue in order to draw up a constitutional roadmap to fix the current crisis without giving further details. To Africa now, Kenya's President William Ruto said on Wednesday that he would engage with any court challenges to his victory, a day after his defeated rival Raila Odinga vowed to pursue all legal options to do so. Ruto said that his administration will have nothing to do with that blackmail and the threats they have seen. His remarks refer to the post-election violence that has often plagued Kenya following disputed elections.
For a job very well done. We have won these elections against many odds. We thank God that this has been made possible. We are very proud Kenyans. This day we will be suggesting members of Kenya Kwanza to the transition committee. I think we are doing that today so that the process of the transition can kick in and we can go towards concluding the matter of the election.
The Director General of the World Health Organization said on Wednesday that the humanitarian crisis in Ethiopia's Tigray is worse than the conflict in Ukraine, and suggested that racism could be behind a lack of attention from the international community. Osama Ayadi.
The World Health Organization's director has suggested racism could be behind the lack of international attention being paid to Ethiopia's war-shattered Tigray region. In an international appeal, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who is from Tigray, questioned why the plight of civilians there is not getting the same attention as Ukraine conflict.
I can tell you that the humanitarian crisis in Tigray is more than Ukraine, without any exaggeration. And I said it many months ago. Maybe the reason is the color of the skin of the people in Tigray.
War broke out in Tigray in November 2020 between the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the federal government and its allies. The fighting eased in March after both sides had fought to a bloody stalemate and the government declared a humanitarian truce. Tedros said the situation within Tigray is the worst disaster on earth.
Nowhere on earth 6 million people are sealed off. Nowhere. From basic services, from their own money, from telecom, from food, from medicine.
He added that he was not saying this because he was from Tigray, but because it is the truth. The UN and humanitarian agencies have warned that millions of people are facing severe hunger in the region's worst drought in 4 decades. That includes the threat of famine in Somalia. The World Health Organization has called for $123.7 million to tackle health problems resulting from growing malnutrition, as 6 million people are unable to access basic services.
Walmart, Walgreens, and CVS pharmacies have been ordered by U.S. judges to pay the counties in Ohio $650.6 million for their role in the opioid crisis. This sum will make it possible to finance education and prevention programs and reimburse agencies and organizations for their costs incurred in managing the crisis. With the goal of wresting the economy, Sierra Leone is denominating its money in order to lower the amount of cash people carry around the associated risks. The central bank has removed the third zero and reprinted Leone notes. After months of drought and thunderstorms swept across parts of the south of France on Wednesday, as multiple departments were under orange warning to the severe weather, France and Britain are preparing to suffer violent storms which could cause flooding in several regions. After an unexpected drought, heat waves and wildfires, violent storms and heavy rain have devastated many nations around the world. Sofiane Kantouri tackles the story in this report.
An unexpected rainstorm caused a landslide that affected more than 6,000 people and over 1,500 homes in Datong County. The death toll reached 16 people and 36 others are missing. The rescue and relief efforts during the emergency have involved more than 2,000 people. Investigations into the accident are ongoing as the additional rescue efforts. New Zealand was pummeled by heavy rain on Thursday, adding to the chaos and closing roads brought on by the storm that had already compelled hundreds of people to leave their homes.
This morning my son came in and said, "Mum, there's mud and water coming down the hill." I went up the top to the farmland only to find that the hill was it was like a crater. It was opening up and the land was just coming down. So within a couple of minutes I notified the two top neighbours and it was all on from there.
Londoners suddenly experienced heavy rain on Wednesday after several weeks of hot, dry weather. According to an amber weather warning from the Met Office, the UK's National Weather Service, there may be flooding in some areas of southeastern England. Some areas of western New Mexico were inundated by flash flooding and heavy rain, forcing the closure of all routes of Interstate 40. The National Weather Service warned that a significant surge of monsoon moisture might persist through Saturday when it issued a flood watch for the region on Tuesday.
And now for more international news, let's follow this roundup by Marwa Belayor.
Bangladesh leader told the visiting UN rights chief that hundreds of thousands of ethnic minority Rohingya refugees living in overcrowded camps in Bangladesh must return home to Myanmar, where they had fled waves of violent persecution. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet arrived to Bangladesh capital Dhaka and visited Rohingya camps in Cox's Bazar district near the border with Myanmar. Argentina's trade union federation mobilized in Buenos Aires to demonstrate against big corporations amid the rising cost of living. This was the first protest led by the General Confederation of Labor in the 3 years of Alberto Fernandez's presidency. Dozens of activists calling for democracy in Hong Kong pleaded guilty in Kowloon court. 29 out of 47 pro-democracy activists charged with conspiracy to commit subversion under the Beijing-imposed national security law plead guilty. The 47 democracy activists were detained last year over their involvement in an unofficial primary election in 2020 that authorities said was a plot to paralyze Hong Kong's government. After Stoltenberg said NATO will increase its peacekeeping force in Kosovo if there is an escalation of tensions with neighboring Serbia, on the eve of EU-facilitated talks between the estranged Western Balkan neighbors, peacekeepers in NATO's Kosovo force have increased their presence in northern Kosovo to be able to react to security challenges.
According to advocates, the majority of the migrants arriving in New York from Texas each day arrived on Wednesday just before 8:30 a.m. In an interview with Reuters, immigration officials estimated that about 140 migrants arrived on Wednesday. The countries of origin of the migrants were not yet fully reported. However, the migrants present spoke to reporters and expressed their desperation.
I think there's at least 140 people. The official count is not done. Their journey is a 36 to 48 hour journey from Texas to New York City, at times with very little food or no food at all. As you may have seen, a lot of families showed up with very small children. So we're just trying to pick up their spirits a little bit after the grueling journey that they took to get to the southern border, which at times is over a 3,000-mile walk, and then this 48-hour bus ride to New York City.
And with this migrant story, we reach the end. Thank you so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our special network pages, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.